lounging, son.
All right, welcome back to the Comic Lounge. My name's Ryan, and back with me again, my boy Manny. We're going to talk our picks of the week. Kind of a light week. We were already talking about it. There wasn't like a ton of stuff. I mean, some stuff in the middle of arcs. The books I did read were really good. I'll let you, if you want to start, or I'll start, whatever you want to do.
Yeah, I don't mind. I'll start. My first pick is something that I added pretty recently, which is Hulk, obviously from Marvel, which restarted about 10 issues ago, like with like a new volume. And this current volume has been by Donny Cates and Ryan Ottley. Donny Cates, we all know from having written The King in Black, crossover for Image, Venom for a very long time. Like he kind of came like very slowly, like one of my favorite current writers, because I think he's really good at like combining like high concept ideas with like a lot of very human, like grounded themes, and a lot of writers are good at one and the other. Like you have someone like Mark Millar, who's great at the high concept, but maybe it's not so grounded that you connect with it emotionally. But I find that Donny Cates is like that. And Ryan Ottley, I've loved ever since he drew Invincible. I think he's like one of the like the better like modern superhero artists. So I've been picking it up. What's interesting about this issue is I know Donny Cates has dropped off of it, so this issue is actually written, lettered, I think, inked, and obviously drawn by Ryan Ottley. So he did most of the work on this, which I think is what's going to happen going forward. I think there was something from working right now. I'm not sure. I haven't been following the news on that, but anyway, the comic is really great. The high concept here is that Bruce Banner has sort of found a way to control the Hulk by basically the Hulk's body is like a starship. Banner's psyche controls the thoughts, and then the everything is like into three and almost turn the body into like it's not literally the starship, but it operates like one. So he's able to sort of control the aspect of the Hulk and himself at the same time, like he's piloting a starship. It works better if you read it than I'm explaining it, because it sounds kind of weird. And honestly, it kind of is, but I feel Hulk is a title that should be kind of weird. I think it excels when someone tries to bring something new to it. And that's what I've liked about the Hulk, especially in the last few years. Every time it's changed creative hands, it's almost like a whole new concept and take on the character. And this arc has been a lot of fun. Currently, the Hulk is on a planet in an alternate dimension where everybody that lives there is some sort of gamma-like creature. So he doesn't really need to worry about destroying anything or anything like that. It's almost like he's finally found like a home. So there's a comedic aspect to it because he's participating in that. He's almost like Olympic Games with all these other gamma creatures. But being that it's the Hulk, there's still a lot of things about abuse and trauma that are being worked in there. And so it's not just like a big slugfest. But this issue is kind of like that, but it's great because, I didn't really think about it, but Ryan Ottley was almost born to draw this book, man. Like, he's great at drawing these like hyper violent scenes, but because he has almost a cartoony style, it's not really disturbing. It's more fun. Mm-hmm. And for instance, like the scenes where the Hulk psyche is being used to pump up the strength, it's basically the Hulk mindlessly fighting like different villains in like this barren landscape. This is all going on in like, psychologically. So right. You have like Hulk like fighting a giant Wolverine and like jumping through him and tearing his stomach open. And like, if you've read Invincible, you know how Ryan Ottley draws like carnage, like lots of blood splatters and like lots of movement, like lots of action. And it really works. I like it. It's a very big departure from what the Al Ewing did on the Hulk in the previous volume, which was this sort of like almost horror take on the character. This is a much more like science fiction action sort of style, but I highly recommend it. And I'm not sure what's going to happen with it going forward, because I think there's a bit of an unknownness whether Donny Cates is coming back. But judging from what I read in the back matter of the issue, Ryan Ottley is taking creative reign, so might be a good time for people to jump on, especially if you're a Ryan Ottley fan, because I don't think he's ever really written. Much creating.
He's never written a comic, I don't think. Yeah.
So this is his first, so it's interesting, and And I really liked it, man. The art is great. Lots of great creature designs, lots of great landscape designs, lots of energy in the book. So yeah, I mean, I've always loved the Hulk as a character, and this current take is unlike anything I've ever seen anyone do. So I highly recommend it. And there's also a dope cover by Juni Ba.
Oh, dope! Yeah, I love Junie
Yeah,
Ba. Yeah.
yeah. So I didn't even know that he was doing an alternate cover. So when I was flipping through all of them, I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna take this one, you know. So yeah, man, I highly recommend it. I think this is part 3 of the current arc, but I know the volumes have all been collected thus far, so you can easily go back and find them. It does a good job of sort of giving you the basics, so you can't just sort of pick up the issue. So that's my first pick. It's Hulk number 11.
Yeah, I tried with this run. I really liked Immortal Hulk. I guess I like more of the horror aspect. You know, like I feel like he's a monster, and I feel like that kind of leans better. You know, the Jekyll and Hyde of it with that character. And I only picked, to be honest with you, I used to really like Donny Cates' writing, but I always felt like, and I'm not trying to knock him. I'm going to try to keep this as not as negative as possible. But I just felt like he never really closes a story that well. I feel like he has these big ideas, but for me, his endings fall flat a little bit. And when he took over Thor, I feel like there should have been a longer break in between Jason Aaron and whoever was going to write Thor next, right? Like, I feel like he kind of, to me, dismissed some of the stuff that Aaron had kind of built up, and he kind of changed a lot of it a little too abruptly, in my opinion. And it just, like, the art was beautiful, like in the Thor book, but I couldn't get into it as much. And then with the Hulk, I was like, oh, it's Otley. Like that was the draw for me, but I couldn't get into the concept. And I feel like that also like would have benefited from more of a break between Immortal Hulk and this new launch. I think.
Yeah, and it is a very weird concept compared to what's come before, you know?
Yeah, you know, like I feel like if you're gonna do that big of a change, it needs to let the other series kind of like breathe a little bit and let it kind of like sit with people before you immediately jump into this new concept, you know, like especially if it's somewhat of an ongoing story of this character. It's not like it's a mini series, it's not like it's a one-off story. So if you're going to do that, I feel like you need to have that separation. But Otley's only on till 15, I think, from what I read. So he's going to be off the book. He's going to do a creator owned.
Yeah, and I think he maybe comes back after that. I'm not sure. I got to reread what the editorial in the back says.
Oh yeah, I just went based off what he said on Twitter, but I don't know. I didn't read the editorial, but I also think like I'm of the opinion that he is better serviced in creator owned because, like you said, he does that carnage violence very well, and you can't really do it at Marvel, and you can't do it at DC.
Yeah.
So like he's kind of having to rein himself in, and I think that's why
this is about as violent as Marvel gets.
Exactly, unless it's like, you know, a mature book, which they don't really do anymore. They haven't done that in a long time. But I do agree that visually it was a very fun book, you know, and I think that maybe when it's done, I'll try and reread it again because I didn't like. It's not like I hated it. I don't know. Donny Cates for me, it's like it's very hit or miss because like I really loved his Venom stuff. Like it got me into the character, but then I'm just like the ending. I was like, fuck, I expected kind of more, like having invested that much time into it. I'm not trying to be negative.
Those are all valid points, man. You know,
I guess my favorite book of the week, I'll jump into that. Nightwing 100. So like I said, when we were talking about our best of 2022, I think this even goes probably into 2021, I think is when Tom Taylor took over with Bruno Redondo on art. Finally having a Nightwing book that I could read and enjoy again, because I did not like what they were doing with Rick Grayson. Lost his fucking memory because he got shot in the head by KG Beast, and just like it was just a very, very weird story that I feel like should have lasted maybe an arc and that's it, but it lasted like over a year. But it's just like pushing Nightwing more to the forefront. I mean, if you look at this cover too, it's like he's in the front of basically almost all the major DC heroes, right? And that's kind of the gist of this issue is they're propping him up.
It's a dope cover. It really stood out when I saw it at the store.
Yeah, like they're propping him up to be kind of the main like leader almost. I don't know how else to word it of the DCU. Like that's what they're doing, and it opens up with Nightwing and Bruce, and they're standing in front of Alfred's gravestone, and that's kind of what it leads to, like where it takes off, and basically he's being asked, like to lead, and throughout it we have like old Nightwing artists on here. We got Rick Leonardi, Eddie Barrows, Scott McDaniel, Javier Fernandez, and Mikhail Yanin, all artists that have worked on either a Nightwing book or the Grayson book that Tom King wrote, right? So it's like it's pretty cool to see that. Even here, like I'll show real quick. I love like having the old artists, like they're showing the versions of Nightwing when they were
Nice.
drawing, and I thought that was a cool little touch. You know what I mean? Like just
Oh
seeing
yeah,
that.
yeah, definitely.
So that was pretty dope. And like it's been talked about, right? Like online and shit, like that the Justice League is kind of taking a back seat. And in the issue, Nightwing is fighting against a villain called Heartless. If you haven't been reading it, you probably don't know who that is because it was a villain created for this run, but he has his Titans teammates. So you have Wally Flash, you have Donna Troy, you have Starfire, Beast, Raven, Cyborg, all coming and they're fighting with him. After the fight, Superman and Wonder Woman come. This is just, it's such a great scene. And they come and they're like, he's like, oh, like we don't, or he's like, we could probably use your help. Like, and they're like, you got it. We want to talk to you real quick. And they go to the Hall of Justice. Hall of Justice is fucking destroyed, because of what happened in Dark Crisis. And they basically say that they need to rethink what the League is, and it's his time to lead. It's such like a power. Like Tom Taylor just has these moments, dude. Like so powerful, like with his words. And he decide, and then from there he's like, you go back, he's talking with Bruce, and there's a moment where him and Bruce are talking, and he says how Alfred was always that kind of middleman, that he could kind of tell Dick what he was feeling because Bruce always had a hard time saying it. And I won't get into like the actual dialogue, but Bruce basically kind of says something that like you don't normally hear Batman say, like a very heartfelt conversation. After it, Dick hugs him and says, "I love you, Dad." And I was like that
Oh,
was
that's
heart wrenching, And
yeah,
then at the end of it, like it basically, it capstones with him. He bought a prison and he's like reworking it, which I can only assume is going to be turned into a Titan's Tower because he's running Bloodhaven. He inherited Alfred's estate, so he has like all
yeah.
this money, and he introduces the Titans at the end, and that's kind of how it ends. And what I can only assume, DC is probably going to have a Titans book, and that's going to be their flagship team book instead of Justice League, which I think is dope because I think that,
Yeah.
I mean, in the 80s, Teen Titans was outselling. Well, I think it was like Teen Titans and Legion were their top sellers in the 80s. And so I think it's cool to see that team kind of take the forefront, let the league, take a back seat because I love those characters. So, yeah, it was a really awesome book. Like this is how you do an anniversary issue. Like it was
And
really
I didn't pick it up because I have, I have read some of Tom Taylor's run, but I've been reading it in trades. But I think you sold me, man. I mean, I think I'm gonna go back to the shop in the
and
next couple of weeks and grab the issue because
like I
maybe it's time for
said,
me to start adding it to my pull list.
it isn't a bad entry point to be honest with you. There's an issue that's one long, like basically one long scene. Like from page to page it continues. And I think it was like in the 70s or something, but that was a really dope issue. I think the second collection just came out. But actually what's weird though is the second collection comes after Joker War. So there's a Joker War hardcover of the Nightwing issues that's in between volume 1 and 2. So it's I don't know why they numbered it that way. To me, it's kind of stupid, but it is DC, one of DC's best. I think I've said that before. And this is a good jumping on point. Like I said, if you don't know who Heartless is, it's not going to take away from the comic. Like I think that you can still like enjoy it, and it could just be like a random villain. It doesn't necessarily need to. You don't need the backstory. But this is it, dude. This is why I love DC. I love the legacy aspect of DC, and seeing now the legacy of a team and having him be the main guy. Because to me, Dick Grayson, as I said it before, was like right up there with the Trinity. of Superman.
Yeah, yeah. I was gonna mention. I think we talked about before where you said he's almost like the fourth. You know what I mean? Like it's not even a trend anymore.
So go pick that up. Don't feel like oh man, it's issue 100. Should I or shouldn't I? Like it's a comic you should read. If you are a DC fan, if you haven't been reading DC for a while, even I think this is like a good little jump back in, because this whole Dawn of DC initiative that they're doing, it just seems like there's going to be a lot of really dope stories, dope creative teams coming out of it. So go pick it up.
All right, so next title is The Furthest from Here by Matt Rosenberg and Tyler Boss. It's an Image title. It's on its 10th or I think it's 10th issue. Mm-hmm. And it's the story is basically about a future where it seems like a virus or some kind of event wiped out a lot of the adults in the world. So everyone that's left are either children or adolescents or just right past post-adolescence. And everyone that's left alive has sort of been split into tribes they create for themselves. And, you know, it's almost like the Warriors, like where each tribe has a theme to them, you know, like they might dress the same, they may wear certain masks. The tribe we follow is called the Academy, and they live out of an old huge record store, almost something like a Virgin Megastore, or like if you live in LA, like maybe like Tower Records or Amoeba. That's mm-hmm. where they have their base of operations. And they're obsessed with music. That's what they revolve their life around. Like each character has a record that they call their god, and that record is like something they connect with, and like they carry it around almost as like a totem. Even the title, "What's the Furthest Place from Here," is a line from a punk band called Jawbreaker. Basically, it's about these characters trying to find out what happened in this world and trying to explore the world outside of their own little area. And it's a very strange title. At first, I found it a little bit impenetrable because he doesn't give you a lot of exposition or a lot of information right away. They just sort of brought you into the world. So it took a couple of issues to get going. But once it did, man, it's a very interesting world building. I love the fact that he uses music as such a big part of the comic book. Obviously, the title of the comic, like the records, and like what's cool is that like Tyler Boss's art is a little mixed media, because like the clothing they wear, like if they're wearing flannel shirts, like it's actually like a pattern of flannel that like they sort of like put into the artwork, and like the record covers are actually sort of like the actual cover, like they haven't redrawn it, you know. Mm-hmm. So like it's very interesting to look at. And then also, like each comic is broken up into like these little short chapters. So you read it at these short clips, which make the narrative move very quickly. So I really like it, man. I suggest you add it to your pull list. Especially if you really love music like indie rock and like punk rock. There are so many cool references, but they work thematically. It's not just name dropping a band to be cool. Like he finds a way to work the love of music into like the DNA of the comic book. In fact, certain editions of the comic come with like a limited 7-inch with a band that sort of, or a song that works thematically with that issue. I haven't picked any of those issues up, but I might be trying to get some of those going forward, because they're a little bit more pricey since they come with a book. But it's a very unique title, man. It's one of the most original books I've read in a while, and I really love it. So the new issue came out, and what's the furthest place from here? That's my second pick.
Yeah, I gotta pick up the trade. I read the first issue. I liked it, but that was at that point I was letting my pull list get like pretty out of control. So like I'm just like, this is certain stuff I'll be like, I'll get the trade. And I know some people are like, oh, you should support the single issues because there is no trade if you don't get them. But you know, I mean, I only have so much money to throw around. I did definitely dig the comics, so I'll go back and pick it up. You definitely kind of sold me on that. My next pick is Trojan #1 by AWA, Artists, Writers, and Artisans, I think is what that acronym stands for. This is the company that Axel Alonso helped co-found. You know, the old editor-in-chief at Marvel. He was editor of Vertigo and stuff like that. So a lot of this, I haven't read a lot from this company. I think I told you before we hit record, I read the Erratic book by Kari Andrews because I'm just a huge fan of Kari's. I've read bits and pieces, like I've read a first issue here and there. But the cover and the solicit for it kind of got me to pick it up. And also I was trying to find stuff to talk about, honestly, because so much of it, like I could have talked about Flash again, but I just talked last week, and it's coming out every week, so I don't want to do that every week. But I'll read the solicit, which is what pulled me in, because I don't think I'll be able to like truly sell it as well as this. So it's, once upon a time we lived alongside legends, creatures of myth, centaurs, fauns, gorgons, kelpies, gnomes, and more. They were spectacular, majestic, powerful, peaceful, pure. In comparison, we were ugly, weak, warmongering, rotten. Is it any wonder we could not live alongside them any longer? After driving these legends to the fringes of society, an uglier form of mythos takes shape in the form of rumors of live snuff shows for dark web high rollers. When mysterious young woman Nessa enlists the help of a hacker to take a tour of the grisliest corners of the dark web, she sets in motion a war between those who peddle to mankind's darkest fantasies and a world that transcends imagination. Trojan is a fantasy thriller full of wonder and horror in equal measure. That's what made me pick up the book. And
that's
it was
really cool.
Yeah. So, and it was dope. And it's sometimes I'll read a solicit and I'm like, oh, that sounds really good. And you can write a good solicit to kind of lure people in, but it doesn't necessarily always hit the mark. But Daniel Kraus is the writer. I'm not familiar with his work. I believe it's Laci, L-A-C-I, but it's a guy, so I don't know if that's how you say it, because but beautiful looking book. It is like, it talks about it throws you kind of into the world. So like the beginning of it was a little bit kind of not confusing, I wouldn't say, but I just kind of like didn't know what was going on. So it took me about like halfway through the issue to kind of like really get into it. And Nessa is the one you're following, and this guy Dirk is the guy that's kind of her into the dark web, and like he's showing her like all this stuff, and you kind of see like, I mean, this is real shit that happens. I mean, Ed Piskor kind of talks about it in Red Room, right? Like all this crypto and like underground shit. So, but this does it in a way that's not like super gory or violent. And she at one point asks him to show her death, and then he's showing her, and you don't see all of it, but he's showing her all these different ways people are dying. And then you see a mermaid that's like cut up like sushi, which is kind of weird. And then you get the big reveal that she's a fairy, I guess I should have said spoiler alert, but I mean, I think it's kind of on the cover. It kind of alludes to it, but it's an interesting book, interesting concept. I'm still on the fence whether or not I'll get, because it's only 4 issues. So I'm on the fence of whether I'll just wait for the trade, because I feel like this would read really well. And a lot of these books to me read better as like one story, because they are short. They don't always go past 4 issues. Some of them get sequels. They're an interesting publisher in the sense that there's so many different genres that they do, kind of like the next publisher that one of your picks kind of does.
Yeah.
And we'll get into that book. But I definitely think if you're looking for like a new indie book and you want to like kind of like check it out, I mean, I think the cover's pretty dope. I mean, I like the art on the cover as well. And they put out, like I said, some interesting stuff. It's a dope concept. So I'm definitely gonna read it. I just don't know if I've decided whether or not it's making the cut for the pull list or if it's gonna be a wait for the trade kind of thing. But dope book.
I mean, the reason you picked that is a good segue for my next pick, because like you, it was a light week for me, and I was like, I want to pick up a couple of other things, have some other things to talk about, some other things to read on my day off. So I picked up Maniac of New York, Don't Call It a Comeback, which is the first issue of a new miniseries in the Maniac of New York series. And it's a book by Aftershock, also a publisher that does all sorts of genres. And this book has always been popping up in places in Twitter. And I know Elliot Kalan, the writer, was like a head writer for like The Daily Show. He does a bunch of podcasts. So I knew who he was. And I always saw it, but I never paid too much attention to it. But when I looked up the concept, it really intrigued me. And basically, it's about a slasher named Maniac Harry who goes around New York killing people. But he's unkillable, unstoppable every time they try to catch him. So basically, at one point, New York just decides we got to live with it. So they set up these curfews and these laws and things like that just so that they can live around this guy that's just unstoppable.
That's crazy.
So, yeah, it is a cool idea. So this miniseries seems to take place after, I guess in the last one, they either caught Maniac Harry or he just sort of disappeared. So when it starts, New York has sort of been recovering from not having had any sort of Maniac Harry killings. When at a homeless tent city, another masked killer wearing the Maniac Harry mask, but it's female, kills a bunch of people, and that's sort of what starts this series. And as you can see, from the cover, the mask is obviously an homage to Jason Voorhees.
Mm-hmm.
But it's such a cool concept, man. I really enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun with the book. The art on this one is by I think the name is Andrea Moody, and the art is great, man. It has like I don't know if you know who Ben Templesmith is. It kind of has like a slight Ben Templesmith vibe, a little Mike Mignola thrown in there too. Very stylized, but it really works because it's a horror comic, and again, it's one of those concepts that is really cool. And I love slashers. I've always loved slasher movies, and I'm a sucker when they find some cool to do with such an overused concept.
Mm-hmm.
Idea that everyone in the city just has to deal with this. It's almost like like something like snow or like a hurricane, just something you got to deal with in your daily life. Makes it very interesting, and it's a good jumping on point because there's enough exposition done through like media scenes in the comic and like interviews with some of the police that if you haven't read it, because I haven't, I was able to easily follow it. So I recommend it, man. Check it out if you're looking for something new. There's not a lot of horror comics that I've been reading these days, so this one definitely stood out to me, and it's such a cool concept, man. I recommend it. So I think I'm gonna go back and at least get one of the trades to see how it all started.
Yeah, is there two series?
Yeah, there's 2 volumes, I think, already. Yeah.
Okay.
And I think this is obviously going to be the 3rd, although I'm feeling that this one is only like a 2 or 3 issue. I think maybe this is like an in-between while they work on the next, or as we were talking about earlier, there's a lot of stuff going on with Aftershock too. So maybe they're pausing the story to see what happens. That's a conversation on itself. Yeah. But I mean, definitely pick it up, man. These creators are obviously working from a place of love, because when you have a concept this original and this strange, it's something that they really, really care about. So I'm gonna stick with it and see where at least where this miniseries goes.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely like you said. A lot of people are talking about it, especially like when I was still at the shop full time. That's when the first miniseries dropped, and I remember like with Aftershock, it was usually like we'll order some number 1s and then it goes to subs only for the issues after that because they just don't sell that well in the shop. But so many people asked about that book, and I think it might have been spec'd on at first, and I think that might have been why. But then a lot of people ended up sticking with the book because they liked it. So it's definitely a book that I've always kind of thought of reading. I actually almost took it home yesterday because you told me it was your pick. I saw the message on my phone, but I was like, fuck, I don't know. Like, is it going to be a bad choice to like jump into this right here? Like, should I read the trades? Now I kind of want to check it out.
And I'm a fan of someone like Elliot Kalan. Like when someone outside of comics who loves comics writes a comic, like one of my picks from last year was Minor Threats by Patton Oswalt. Like, I really like that. I feel like it almost brings a breath of fresh air into the comic, because like you have someone that loves them but is not really part of that world. Yes. And then they create a book and it has an original feel that I really enjoy. So I always, especially if it's someone that I like, or I want to follow and see what they do with comics, because it's so great that people outside of comics love comics so much, that they want to be a part of it. So that aspect of it,
I always think that's pretty cool too. Yeah, for sure. Real quick, I'll just give a little shot because I know there's another book. I mean, I read it too, so because I'm a Turtles fan, so I know that's going to be.
That's what I was gonna shout out, because like I was a little behind on Ninja Turtles, but I did catch up for this issue. So I mean, if you want to say a few things, then I'll finish it up.
I was just going to say about World's Finest. I talked about it on our best of. I can't really talk about it because I don't want to spoil it, especially spoiling it for you. But I talked about the reveal of this Sun Boy. Who was from a parallel Earth that kind of becomes Superman's sidekick in this storyline. But I really like what I can't talk about is the Key. I don't know if you know that villain, right? The Key.
Yes.
Okay, so he's in this arc. Joker's in this arc. that's been kind of fun. I like having stories set in the past, so that's always like. And Mark, like I said, Mark Waid, dude. I mean, we've talked about him so much on the show, whether it's been with you or other people that have been guests on the show. I like where it ends up. I like kind of like the reveal and how it's connected. It's connected to something that Mark Waid wrote in the past. So that's all I'll say. But I definitely think that, much like I said with Nightwing, one of my top 3 favorite books at DC right now. And Dan Moore is killing it on the art. Go pick it up. I wish I could say more, but I wouldn't mind spoiling it for other people because they can always turn this off, but you can't turn me off. So just go pick up World's Finest.
Yeah. My last pick is, the new issue of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. If you've been reading, or if you haven't been reading the Turtles, right now they're in the middle of this huge arc that they've been building up to for the end, where the Rat King has launched, the plan to sort of attack New York City, take it over. There's a lot going on in the Turtles now, so it might not be the best place to start. But I think for a long time, a lot of people were criticizing the ongoing title because they said a lot of things weren't happening. It seemed like it was just sort of like, going along at a very slow pace. But ever since the Armageddon War kickstarted, I don't know, I've been having a lot of fun. There's a lot of crazy ideas. You got they bringing back Dimension X, and you got like the Triceratons coming in too. So like they're really using a lot of Ninja Turtles lore finally, and combining it with the sort of angle that Sophie Campbell has, which is like more about the community that the Turtles have created in New York, which is something I really liked about her run, is that like she sort of put back from the action for a while to create this community of characters and this new cast. And you and I, we've been reading the Turtles our entire lives, so I think it's kind of cool that people coming into the Turtles now are going to have their own cast of characters that hopefully will be as important to them as some of the classics were to us. But it doesn't mean that you don't have your classics, because you have Jones in here, you have Baxter Stockman in here, and you have Shredder. By the way, I really do like what they've been doing with Shredder lately too, where like he's sort of been redeemed, sort of now a mentor in spirit form of the Turtles, and it makes him a much more complex character. And that's been like one of the few things that's sort of been like keeping me really interested in the book. And again, man, if you're a Turtles fan, it's a no-brainer. Pick it up. You want to support the title, make sure that the concept is published. And yeah, I mean, Armageddon War is about to wrap up, I think, in April. So there's still a couple of months left of the main title being part of the crossover. And then you also have your Armageddon games coming out. But the art has been really cool lately. Great covers. You can, get variants by Kevin Eastman, but also like the regular covers are really cool. So I mean, Turtles has always been solid, and I think like low key one of the better books that always has something to offer, at least for me. And it can get overlooked because the Turtles oversaturate culture and they're everywhere. But don't forget, it started as a comic book. It's always been a good comic, and like definitely it's still a comic book that's out there. So grab it if you like the Ninja Turtles, man.
Yeah, I'll throw my 2 cents in real quick before we wrap it up. Obviously, I've always loved the Ninja Turtles. There's times though when this run, I can understand the criticism a little bit because 100%, some of it becomes more like slice of life. And then also the fact that there's a mutant town, I feel like kind of takes a little bit away from what makes the Turtles special and unique. I don't know. Sometimes I'm just like, I feel like they almost aren't the stars of their own book sometimes, and I feel like that's what a lot of criticism, like, but I dig the book. Don't get me wrong. Like, I will continue to buy the book. I enjoy it. It's not like I read it and I'm like, what the fuck did I just read? But I feel like we're 136 issues into this run. So it's already the longest run that Ninja Turtles has ever had, by far, by a huge margin. But I do think that if you want to continue this type of story and you want to continue this type of world without having to like basically at some point erase Mutant Town and erase some of these characters and make it go back, I think you almost kind of have to have like maybe a series set in the past or like a series of miniseries, like every once in a while do it, because I do feel like there was an annual that came out not that long ago where it was just the 4 turtles. And that was like
the one by Juni Ba, right?
Yeah, and that was like my favorite Turtles comic in a while.
Yeah, that one was fantastic.
Yeah, so I feel like, and like I'm not saying you need to cater to nostalgia, but I do feel like there is some Turtles fans that, maybe aren't on board with this, but love the Turtles, and like, so maybe you do both. Like I said about World's Finest. Yeah, that's an ongoing at DC now.
That's actually a really good idea, man. Like that I would read that in addition to this.
I would buy both.
Like a Ninja Turtles taking place like before all this happened, where you still have sort of like a World's Finest, or like, back when Marvel used to do like Spider-Man, like the Lost Years or the Untold Tales of Spider-Man, just something that takes place like outside of this continuity is more classic.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, look, you'll either get fans like us that will buy both, or maybe you get fans back that aren't necessarily digging this. Because I could see, I'm not saying that it's right or wrong, but I could see some Ninja Turtle fans that are just like, you know what, this isn't the book for me. Like, this isn't what I want to read in terms of Ninja Turtles. Like, that's why you have a book like Last Ronin that fucking blows up.
I said it's definitely not a book for casual like ninja. Like if you haven't been following Turtles and you jump into this, you're gonna be mad confused. And
that's it's not very inclusive. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like, oh yeah, I can jump in and buy this issue. Like, even jumping in at the beginning of an arc of this, you'd be fucking lost if you only have a surface knowledge of the Turtles and you jump in. You're like, who is this? Like, who are all these characters? Like, it could be very daunting. And then you're having to buy all these trades just to understand what's going on in the current. And I think that kind of takes away from the fact that every comic is somebody's first comic. You know, you have to look at it in that sense. There's a way to do it where it's not like you're recapping everything in the beginning of the issue, or you're making it boring for the fans that have been reading for a long time. I just think that's why I think that it would be kind of cool if they had a sister series, almost like where it is set in the past. Maybe that it follows more of, even not necessarily follows the Mirage continuity from back in the day, but just like something even set within this history, would be dope, But that's all I have to say.
You mentioned the recap. I do gotta say one gripe and criticism is that like the size of the type for the recaps is so small on the cover that like I mean, I'm old, I wear glasses, but I had to pull out a fucking magnifying glass to be able to read it. So it's like IDW, just go one size bigger on that font, please.
Just up that font.
There's plenty of room on the page. Remember us old guys, I don't want to be doing this with the damn book. But yeah, so like I noticed it and laughed when I was doing that. But yeah, those are all valid points, man. And the Turtles are an evergreen concept, so that would be great. But I'm still like you, enjoying the book. I've been supporting it, and like it's one that's always there for me, and I find reading it comforting, and like I want to see where it's gonna go. I've stuck with it this long, I feel like I want to write it out. So I'm definitely gonna stick through and see what happens at the end of Armageddon game, because I feel like there's gonna be a reset then, so we're gonna get something new at the end of that.
Yeah, it kind of feels that way. I agree. But yeah, I mean, even though it was a small week, get some good books, some good quality books. Definitely all worth picking up. Definitely worth your hard-earned money. And I'm kind of excited for next week. There's one book I know that we're both going to be talking about, and that's Last Ronin, The Lost Years, #1.
Oh yeah.
So that'll be a joint pick of the week for sure, because I know I'm excited for it. I'm sure you are too. So, but that's all.
I should be reviewing that for the comics too. So I might even get an advanced copy in the next day or two. So I'm excited. But yeah, because as soon as I got the email from the editor, look, these are the indie books for the week, I was like, I responded, I think before everyone, the TMT, that's mine. I want to write about that.
I would have done the same thing, dude.
When we talked about the book, we said we were wondering if they were going to have other books in this world, and clearly they are.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, when we did record that last Ronin episode, they hadn't announced it yet. That's
and we said,
funny.
hey, we wondered, we wondered, but
yeah. Well, yeah, it'll be cool to talk about that. And that's all I got for this week.
Yeah, same.
If you're not following Manny, make sure you follow Manny. I'll drop his links down below. If you're not following this channel, Comic Lounge, make sure you hit the subscribe button, follow, click all those links down below, follow us on social media. And yeah, come back next week, next Friday. We'll have more picks. And on that note, we're out.
All right, guys. Take it.